welcome to the ArtTech Conversation. My name is Muriel Siki and I will be moderating this conversation. Also with us from the ArtTech team is our technical moderator, Marion Leombre, and Nathalie Pichard, who is the director of the ArtTech Foundation. They would both help you participate in our discussion. If you want to ask questions, just click on public chat and you will find on how to ask your questions. Today, we will be addressing extended reality and dance. What is next? So let me introduce our panel. First, Daniel Strutt. Daniel Strutt is a senior lecturer in the Department of Media, Communications and Cultural Studies at Goldsmith University of London, where he teaches media theory and analysis alongside creative economy. His book, The Digital Image and Reality, Effect, Metaphysics and Post-Cinema, was published with Amsterdam University Press in 2019. With previous research work on Create and the AHRC, I hope I'm saying that right, Creative Economy Program, he now collaborates with dance and digital artists on projects in the area of motion capture, data streaming, and telematic performance. Also with us is Fabio Ferretti, hello, project manager and special projects and development at Fondazione Nazionale della Danza, Aterballetto. I hope my Italian accent was okay. Fabio is especially in love with dance theater and historical reenactment. He studied acting, then jumped into the management and production design of performing arts and cultural events. He has a degree in history and a master's in performing arts management. So Daniel, let's start with you. You have a PhD in digital imagery. How did you start working with dancers?
Hi, everyone. Yeah. So in my PhD, I briefly kind of touched upon the idea of dance in digital imagery. It was in 2010, and it was just when the film Pina Bausch, Dance, Dance, Otherwise We Are Lost came out. And I was fascinated by, the kind of sculptural aspects of dance and depth. And I also looked into like ultra slow motion dance as well, sort of, bringing out the minutiae of dance movement. Now, this writing in one chapter of my book now was picked up by a dance organization, and I started collaborating on small digital dance projects, which led to a big performance in Valletta for City European Capital of Culture 2018, a nice big outdoor motion capture performance, and then I moved into sort of motion capture streaming or remote connection during the pandemic, which, as I'll explain in my presentation in a minute, it was a kind of a boom time in this area. So that's how I ended up getting out of my academic ivory tower in a way, and suddenly into production and working with dancers and digital artists, in the studio, which has been enormously rewarding.
Okay, so will you give us your presentation now so that you can tell us a little bit more about exactly what you do?
Yeah, I will start to screen share just now.
Fingers crossed that it will work. Yay!
Yeah, I'm going to do this. So I adapted this presentation from, it's a more of an academic presentation, an overview of the research I've been doing. Now, obviously, Fabio is working in an arts institution doing proper productions, but when I presented work, it's always been kind of as research or research in progress. So this gives you an overview of that. So I call it dancing into the metaverse, kind of capturing the mood of the time with this word of metaverse. Because essentially that's what we're doing. We're exploring fully embodied dance interaction in completely virtual spaces, shared virtual spaces. And the name of my research project is quite simply called Goldsmith Mocap Streamer. So as I said, post-pandemic, this is a zeitgeist moment for digital performance. There were a lot of existing technologies that are being brought together and used in new ways, as sort of hybridized, convergent technologies. And it's been quite an exciting time. And it seems to be quite a strong kind of will to not revert back to just traditional arts presentation and performance. I focus on dance and performance practices, remote collaborative practices through the streaming of motion capture data. And dance as a form of performance is just, for me, the most kind of primary form of movement in these virtual spaces. It doesn't rely upon facial expression, which is often hindered by this uncanny valley when we use facial capture. And dance offers a kind of alternative model of getting into the metaverse that contrasts in some ways with the kind of Facebook meta version or vision, you could say, of what the metaverse is going to be like. So the research project is called Goldsmith's Mocap Streamer. You can see my website, mocapstreamer.live, quite simply, and there's also an Instagram there, Goldsmith's Mocap Streamer. So the technology we're talking about here, this kind of hybridized technology, this convergence that's happening right now. We've got these new, relatively inexpensive motion capture systems. Previously, motion capture was very, much for the games and film industry, and it was quite prohibitively expensive with systems like OptiTrack and Vicon, which were the industry standard. So here we're seeing motion capture coming out of the professional motion capture studio and into the dance studio, or even into your home or outdoors. We are using the system we use is called Perception Neuron by a company called Neuton, but there's many other competitive systems which are lower cost inertial motion sensor systems. And actually, this was foreshadowed by the Microsoft Kinect camera, which emerged in about 2010 and was widely used in performance. So we developed, as part of our research, our own kind of motion capture streaming tool. Motion capture data is very lightweight, BVH data. I think it's called biovolumetric, something like that. I can't remember. I'm not a technical person, I'm a theorist. And the idea of this was that we bypass video conferencing, which is actually quite heavy, the data that's being sent through video conferencing. We have instead, so by using, motion capture data, instead of having this camera optical video image, we have virtual images, generative images in games engines, and real live interactions. And this can take place in virtual venues, right? So the London Film Festival last year built a virtual venue called The Expanse, which had many rooms and different kinds of virtual experiences in each room. And we had a dance piece within this venue. And this is a massive growth industry where lots of arts festivals, international showcases, and commercial get-togethers are taking place in virtual venues. And it can be experienced through a head-mounted display, through handheld devices, in AR and VR, just on your computer desktop, or even in projection mapped immersive spaces. And here's a few images of this kind of thing happening. That's the Perception Neuron system in the top left corner. And on the top right corner, we have this virtual concert in the game Fortnite. And then we have some other kind of alternative performance spaces. Now, as research, I kind of take a historical view upon this and look back to the beginning in 1966 of this vision of remote, collaborative, interactive creation. And one of the leaders in this area was Roy Ascott, who had this cybernetic vision, a vision of networking as a shared activity that is both dance and an embrace. And I think that's really interesting because even back in 1966, he's talking about this embodied experience, of dancing together as if it was intimate and like an embrace. And he even said it was loving in his writing. I'm just going to flick through some historical examples here that contextualize, I think, what I'm doing today. This is the mother of all demos in 1968. It was the first video conferencing display. With two homemade modems run out of Stanford University. Then in 1980, we had this artwork, A Hole in Space, two screens connecting New York and LA, across the country, and people would just stop and chat to each other spontaneously, working out what kind of shared space they were in and how they could communicate. Of course, while video conferencing is completely normal to us now, it was very strange to these people back in 1980. Paul's sermon, this is a performance where two people are, sitting on a bed and spending time with each other in a way and talking to each other in real time through the interface of this bed. And Laurie Anderson in 1998 projected the image of a prisoner really live onto a three-dimensional object, offering us this kind of sculptural depth and this kind of uncanny sense of presence. But of course, this is all video conferencing kind of software or TV, optical, photographic technologies. And here, in my research, I'm moving towards motion capture as this alternative form. And like I say, using dance and motion capture just is this non-verbal communication, a pure interaction by gesture and body movement. And by doing it in these game engines and virtual environments, you have these opportunities to manifest the body movement in extended ways, in ways that extend out from the body. So you can create these new types of virtual interaction that kind of extend the dancer's work, the dancer's interiority into the space around them. And I think that's really, really interesting. And I've written in various articles about the way we once jumping into the motion capture suit and into these virtual spaces, we very quickly can find ourselves attuning with the other dancers and patterns and shapes and objects within the space. We do feel a tangible sense of presence. So my own research, as I said, is this. It's taken place mostly at Goldsmith, but also at the London Film Festival and at South by Southwest this year. Oh. And I've got a short video to show you here. Oh, sorry. This was in May 2021, where we brought, during lockdown in the UK, where we brought 3 dancers into the same virtual space from their homes, you can see mostly, although one dancer was in the room with us. Later on, we did a second one in November 2021 with a live link between London and New York. And this time we had 2 dancers in the same space and 1 remote. And you can see there's a new set of dynamics emerged within this performance. This was a magical woodland scene.
It's really incredible.
This was what we did at the London Film Festival. Sorry for the quality. And it was very much a prototype. Sorry, I'll stop that because of the music. But it was very much a prototype. This was sending 3 streams of motion capture data into every headset, essentially. So the image it's not being broadcast. It's generating within a games engine within the headset, if you can understand that. These are some other examples of similar work that are being done. The one at the bottom, it was a performance by violinist Lindsay Sterling, within a games engine, and this was witnessed by hundreds of thousands of people around the world, I think. Gilles Jobin, in the bottom right corner, recently presented Cosmogony at Sundance Festival, and it's a very similar concept to what I've been working towards, but with a more expensive motion capture system. And then we also have these kind of hacker communities bubbling up in places like VR Chat, and there's this strong drum and bass scene in where there's a global community of people connecting for these dance parties or raves, essentially. And this is very much a bubble up phenomenon that I think we'll see more and more of. And from the people I know that have taken part in this kind of event, it's a very powerful sense of presence and sharing within the moment. I've got, obviously, because I'm a theorist, I've got some theory concepts about immersion and embodiment and interaction. But I often turn to the voices of the dancers themselves. And this quote at the bottom really sums up, I think, what my research is about. She says, I think it's easy for this experience to be cold and alienating, and so far it has often felt this way. but with shared intentions, heightened awareness, conscious effort, and sensitivity, I believe a connection can be formed and enhanced. There were definitely some out-of-body experiences and moments where I felt the potential of the virtual connection with the other performers. And that, for me, is the purpose of my research, right? Developing these and honing these shared intentions, this heightened awareness, this conscious effort and sensitivity to overcome some of the obstacles. I took this to South by Southwest this year in a panel talking about mocap streaming and remote dance performance, obviously framing it through the kind of metaverse hype at South by Southwest this year. And also I've been part of this, government report on digital technology framed, sort of post-pandemic and the turn to digital technologies within the performing arts. Just a last note on my current research project, which is also funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council, which was to form an artist residency program and then bring these artist residencies into remote collaborative relationships with each other. So we have 5 different teams around the world, in India to Buenos Aires, from Tanzania to Malmo in Sweden and to Malta, where Letta is, in Thailand, between the UK and LA, and finally in Brazil, between LA and Porto Alegre in Brazil. So that's all of the teams together. We're 2 months into a 6-month residency at the moment, and we'll be doing a showcase, hopefully in November of this year, bringing all of these dance artists together. This is just my team, a nice diverse bunch of people, and that's us all together at a training event during our artist residencies. And that's really all.
Well, that's very, very interesting. Thank you very much, Daniel. Now, I guess we need to hear a little bit more from the dancer part, to the voice of the dancers. And Fabio, maybe you can help us with that and tell us a bit more about how you began using extended reality in your work.
Okay, thank you very much again for inviting us. It's really a pleasure. So I will bring and tell you quite a different story from all these such interesting items Daniel's explored. Because firstly, I'm part of this, as you said, National Dance Foundation, Fondazione Nazionale della Danza, Aterballetto, which is quite an institutional organization, quite a big company here in Italy. We can say we are the biggest dance company outside from the lyrical theater. We were born in 40 years ago. I wasn't there at that time, but I joined just 5 years ago. But we have been producing repertoire shows with choreographers from all over the world for these 40 years. So how and why did we jump into the relationship with technology? And what am I going to tell about our case study, which is quite basic and different from lots of stuff just Daniel said, but it's just a case, we can say. 3 years ago, so immediately before the pandemic, my director and me were going around where we had a meeting with a museum director in France. We were discussing with him the possibility to present a performance that we produced for spaces like museum, because our intention was at that time to go beyond the former stage. So starting to produce shows that can be presented and attended by audience in other spaces like museum or urban spaces and so on. So we started to create this project, which is called Microdance, which is let's say as a repertoire of very short performances, 6-minute length for small spaces. 1 dancer, 2 dancers, duet or trio, no more. Every one of these created by different choreographers. So we went to this director museum and we proposed it to him, and he said, "Wow, it's a fantastic idea. I would love to propose to my audience an experience like a visual exposition, but in a museum, and an exposition of dance. I would really enjoy to do that." But at the same time, he asked us, "Okay, but the problem is that you as a dance company can stay, I think, 2 days, 3 days, no more. Then it could be too much expensive for me and it won't be affordable. So we need to do something that can be for a museum, so it can last for a longer time, okay? So something that can stay in a museum for 2, 3, maybe weeks or maybe 2 months." So we started to think about, how can we present dance and maybe leave some traces after the live show? So that was the really early beginning. Then the pandemic arrived, and then we had, unfortunately, lots of free time to think about how to deal with the live performances, but without the possibility to do that. So we created this project, which is called Virtual Dance for Real People, which is like a project that deal between the production of dance for virtual reality. So I'm getting to the point now. For doing that, I would just like to share a short video. It's just 2 minutes length video, which is like an introduction of an overview of this project. There are lots of interview in Italian, but there are subtitles in English, so I think everybody can get it. And I think it could be easier to get the sense of what we are doing. So just a minute, I'm gonna share.
Il periodo dell'emergenza ci ha spinto o costretto a trovare nuovi modi tradizionali, come può essere lo streaming, già più elaborati artisticamente, come sono le videocreazioni, o addirittura connessi a una ricerca assolutamente innovativa come quella della realtà virtuale.
Quando ci è stata lanciata la sfida tecnologica di utilizzare delle tecnologie di realtà immersiva, abbiamo fatto quello che facciamo di solito, cioè abbiamo indagato tra le tecnologie che potessero essere, come dire, candidabili a questa sfida. Quella della Cinematic VR è stata, a nostro avviso, da subito un'ipotesi interessante.
Il concetto di microdanza, quindi di danza pensata ed eseguita in piccoli spazi, entrerà in relazione con l'opera d'arte di diversi autori italiani contemporanei che a loro volta si confronteranno con lo spazio di Palazzo d'Amosto e con le coreografie della Fondazione Nazionale della Danza.
La Cinematic VR, nello specifico la visione stereoscopica, porta una serie di novità interessanti nel mondo della danza, soprattutto perché appunto è in grado di dare allo spettatore un punto di vista non solo privilegiato ma inedito, cioè lo spettatore si trova nelle condizioni di dover scegliere cosa guardare. Naturalmente questa libertà diventa uno strumento per il regista nel cercare di avere l'attenzione dello spettatore, cioè decidere cosa lo spettatore deve guardare.
Il punto più importante di questo processo di ricerca è la richiesta che abbiamo fatto ai nostri coreografi. Non pensare o creare una performance per il palcoscenico e poi adattarla, ma fare un processo di ricerca e di scrittura coreografica nella quale lo spettatore è già integrato, è già sul palcoscenico ed è già parte della ricerca creativa dell'artista.
Al centro della performance stessa, sia in digitale che live, si trova il pubblico, che è in grado di osservare queste due danzatrici che si muovono intorno a loro, giocando con questi avvicinamenti e distanziamenti che proprio il digitale ci permette di potenziare, rispetto magari a una fruizione più teatrale dove c'è sempre comunque una distanza.
Vedere poi quello che è venuto fuori è stato abbastanza sconvolgente, perché il bello è che durante riesci molto vagamente a immaginarti il risultato finale.
Provare a far convivere nello stesso spazio il danzatore e lo spettatore e che questa interazione possa essere almeno forte o anche più forte ed emotiva di quella che avviene normalmente frontalmente in un teatro.
For me it was really challenging, but I think it was also a good way to challenge myself in a way where I had to keep my focus on the piece, but still not to close myself off, because I still had to make this interaction with the camera, like it was a real person standing there.
Riusciamo ad avere non una simulazione, no? O non una semplice copia, diciamo, di quello che avviene realmente, anche perché la visione reale è unica, è sempre stata unica, ma quella appunto di ottenere qualche cosa di nuovo, di espandere, diciamo, questo punto di vista dello spettatore.
Il risultato è la possibilità non solo di arrivare ad osservare il dettaglio, sentire la forza fisica del corpo dell'interprete, ma significa anche trovarsi in qualche modo dall'altra parte della quarta parete, sul palcoscenico, essere partecipe di un movimento che è determinato tanto dallo spettatore quanto dall'interprete.
L'immersività effettivamente in questa formula è una chiave nuova per vivere l'esperienza della fruizione della danza, e lo è sia nel fornirci emozioni forti, talora anche perturbanti, ma anche emozioni, per così dire, più immersive.
Yeah, well, it was just an introduction in order to understand the reason why we were started to work on. So what we did right now, we produced through these 2 years, because we started 1 year and a half ago, produced some small prototype of virtual reality cinematic VR performances, where the performer works a lot with the camera. And of course, the camera become the spectator. So at the end, the audience can attend a virtual performance, always changing the point of view, being integrated, changing completely the perspective. We work from a very basic point of view, because we also like, for example, just putting the camera in the center of the stage. So the spectator immediately finds himself in the center of a performance, wearing an Oculus. Because we understood also that for the audience, as what we think about a lot, because we are like this institutional company, so we think always on the wider perspective of the wider possibility of the market. For the audience, the experience is quite strong, and we understood also that we are facing something completely new, with a completely new grammar to build on, if we wish to put this kind of product inside a system of, touring the show, making sustainables. So we started to work on very specific stuff, like, for example, just looking at dance performance from the center of the stage, or changing continuously the perspective, or starting to make the audience enjoying some movement during the performance. We are doing this kind of experiment. We are right now at the 4th production on that, and we are linking this kind of performance, this kind of production with different places, like historical places, like museum, like places quite also iconical, let's say, places that we would like also to present to audience, to give a different perception of this audience. So one of the goals of this project we call Virtual Dance for Real People is also to change the perspective, the perception of a space through dance. So using dance in virtual reality in order that people can go to a space that normally they won't attend to, and they can find a dance performance thanks to the virtual reality, in order that we can also broaden our audience, also bring more people to enjoy this kind of. So as just the last thing I wanted to share, I have just a very short other video which has no sounds, no interview, but these are just extracts from the first prototypes we produce that can give back the sensation of the audience. They have just another 1.5 minute video. And just here I am. It was. So these were just some extracts from
different projects.
They are the 3 first performances we produced. So they were the early prototypes. And so the sensation of the spectator are similar to what you just saw, of course, through the visor and so on. It's much more immersive. And it's quite interesting about the feedback we got from the audience. We are now pushing this kind of production. We are trying to present it as much as we can, living in lots of spaces for maybe 1 month, 2 months, doing also site-specific production. So, for example, right now we are producing a new one, which it will take place in a library, in an ancient library of Renaissance period. And we will present it in July, and then it will be there forever and ever, in order that the audience can go there, can go to this magnificent library, and then enjoying a dance performance through 3 or 4 visors. Mm-hmm. So this is the goal of the project. We are also trying to developing it on a technology side. Now we are trying to combine also the point of view of the creator and the dancers. Our dancers, of course, are not used to work with this kind of technologies. Also, only just having this camera and changing the perspective of their choreography is not automatic. Needs, as Daniel, of course, knows very well, needs quite training and the time to stay in the studio and focusing on that. And also, really, it's quite a huge work to do also with the creator, with the choreographer, because they need to change. They need first to accept the fact that the technology is not an instrument, but it's a language that can be used together with the dance creation. So it's a source of something that have to be exploited, and it can be with the creator, not later than the creator. So not something that you use at the end to get to one solution. So this will require, I think, lots of work, but we are trying to experiment how this kind of proposition can stay on a national scene for for quite an audience, because everybody asks us to, on institutional level, they ask us to deal with technology, to deal with innovation, digital innovation. But I think we need also to understand really well what it does mean concretely in our, let's say, system on a wide sense. So I think I finished. I stop right now.
Okay, thank you very much, Fabio. That was very interesting to get the dancers and the choreographers' point of view. Let me ask you both this first question, though. How does it work technically? Are you kind of using the same technology as creators of video games, for example, use? Maybe, Daniel, you can start answering.
I think there's a really nice contrast between these two projects as both kind of different inflections of extended reality. I'm using motion capture with these real-time graphics, generative graphics engines. Some of them are based around video gaming technology, but as you can probably see, that kind of carries a specific aesthetic with it, that it's hard to in some ways get away from. So that's part of the reason I'm doing these artistic residencies all over the world, to try and get away from this kind of game aesthetic and see what they come up with. So yeah, that is my own kind of route into it. But there is a lot of stuff that's lost in that. Like I said, you lose kind of fingers and faces to a large extent. It's really interesting contrast with what Fabio's presented, which is from a much more kind of traditional and more established company. I'm very much on the hacker experimental side, if you know what I mean. And hacker communities that are the specialized dancer / creative technologists that are just trying to break new ground in many ways. But it's really important to note that these more experimental technologies are a little bit more fragile. It's harder to sustain, for instance, a performance of maybe even 30 minutes to an hour using this technology. And I think what Fabio's presented is a really different kind of angle. I'm interested to know, actually, Fabio, how do you film this? What kind of setup?
Well, for us was, as you perfectly got it, it was, really a step-by-step process. And because as I said before, bringing technology is inside an institutional dance company is already a challenge somehow, because it's something you need to, let the people trust in, firstly, and try to people get in tune with that. Dancers with, classical, maybe traditional and preparation and education, they try to, the first thing they say, okay, where's the body? So we need to maintain the body. We need to maintain the physical aspect of our work, which is, exactly the center of dance, because dance is something that happens normally live, and it works because it brings people that dance and people who watch to a strong empathy to what is happening right now. So how can we maintain that? We got into the voir because we found this interesting, having this relation, changing this perception, this relationship, having this camera inside the stage and starting to deal with that. At the beginning, we decided also to work, starting from the concept of the, as we say in the Latin, there's the hic et nunc concept, the now and here concept, which is the concept from which the theater, the live experience in theater belongs to. And so we decided, okay, we can, through the voir, we can have the here experience, so that we can build the space as it is in the live experience. We won't have the now experience because the dancers want to be here. So at the beginning, we started to work having the same set. So filming a performance in the same set. And we made some attempt to present it to the audience. So bringing the audience inside the same set. So the first experiment we made, we bring people inside the set. And then we said, okay, there are no dancers. So just wear a visor and you will find them. Right now, we are quite interested in how we can develop this kind of research. Of course, we are looking a lot to mock-up experience. And as you, of course, already underlined, Daniel, the problem, of course, immediately some choreographers gave us back was that fact that through the mock-up, the quality of the movement can't be sometimes so as precise as they would like to, having the movement in the finger, having the precise, this kind of the level they would like to. But for example, I'm really interested in the work of Gilles Jobin. I'm going to invite in our venue Gilles Jobin in November to present Cosmogony, because I'm really interested in how to also this kind of performances can have an audience, how the audience will react to that. I will present Cosmogony to our audience, which is quite a traditional audience. We have a 200 seats venue. It's people who normally attend to see quite old-fashioned dance shows, and I'm quite interested in how they will react in seeing the 30-minute performances with this huge avatar exploding in front of them. So,
yeah, there's another.
Sorry, go ahead, Daniel.
I was going to sort of just name drop Alexander Whitley Dance Company in the UK, like Gilles Jobin, who has really crafted a niche developing work, and it's exactly those questions which you just said, Fabio, that are shaped the development of this work. How to sustain attention, but also how to work with the kind of inefficiencies or glitches and build them into the performance in interesting ways.
Let me ask you this, Fabio. Do you think that, what do you think extended reality brings to dance more generally? And is it a way for you to capture a younger audience? Because we know obviously that young people don't really go to theater, to opera, or to even see dance shows anymore. So, or performances, anymore. So is this a way to bring them back?
Yeah, well, for sure. This is one of the first goal also. Well, goal maybe it's too much concrete. It was something we think too when we started to work on that, because for sure through this kind of language we could try to get to different audience to be much more attractive. For example, let me say that one of the experience we just made this last November, we presented some of these performances. I think the three I just presented some minutes before. We presented it inside a visual art exposition. It was like a setting, 3 months left, with and inside this visual art exposition, we put the scenographies. And we left them for 3 months. We just made two live presentations at the beginning and at the end of the performances. Then with the dancers live. Then we left them just the visors for 3 months, and we got a fantastic reaction from the students from the school. Lots of students came to attend the exposition, and we gave them some. We made some questions to them in order to understand how the experience was and so on. And we got a fantastic feedback on that, because they were really attracted by that. And they were curious about this kind of proposition. And they immediately got, somehow they got involved on that. So I'm quite convinced about the idea of, giving this opportunity in order to break some distance there is actually between theater also as a physical space and the new audience we have. I mean, younger generation for sure, because I think I'm quite convinced about the fact that we need to work on parallel. Developing as much as we can the technology research, but at the end building up a new grammar for the audience. I mean, a new grammar, a really basic grammar. The first experiment we made with visors, we had two kind of completely different reactions. We had people that at the end of a performance, they just asked us, okay, but I couldn't do anything. I expected to move or to have an interaction, like maybe in a mocap experience. So it didn't make me do anything. On the other hand, I had people who attended the performances wearing an Oculus for 7 minutes, completely stuck, doing nothing. So neither just moving around. And then at the end, they asked me, "Oh, were I supposed to look at my back and see where the dancers were going?" No, I just saw the dancer passing, but I wasn't.
They're passive.
Yeah, completely passive. So this means that we need, and it's really interesting on a creation side, to develop the research, and at the same time we need to be connected with our audience in order to explain them what we are doing. So
let me ask Daniel, because you don't work with dancers usually. As you said, you're more on the theory side of it all. So how did they react, and how was it working with dancers?
So in many ways, what we're doing does sit a little bit uncomfortably within the kind of traditional dance community. And it's really interesting that my two dance partners for my project are Alexander Whitley, who's totally invested in this relationship between the real and the digital or virtual avatar body. And also my good friend and longtime dance collaborator, Maven Koo from Akron Can Company, which is a much more established internationally touring company. And there's a real sense of contrast between their priorities. Akron Can comes from a much more storytelling tradition. It's grounded in in narrative work. So it's they're always like, how does the technology serve the story? How does the technology serve the dancer? Whereas Alexander Whitley is more invested in some experimentation of the in-between areas, the gray areas, the boundaries, and that's framed our work very much, this contrast. I think the dancers, there are, as a classically trained dancer who is, been trained through the studio system and the class every morning and stuff like that, it is a big obstacle to step into a completely virtual space and find one's sense of presence and embodiment within that figure. And initially it feels a bit like puppetry, because, essentially that's it feels like what you're doing is controlling a puppet. But really interestingly, especially with the motion capture streaming aspect, with this remote connection, this remote collaboration, when that other avatar comes into the space with you, the attention moves from this puppetry kind of relationship to the other dancer, and like, what can I do with this other dancer? And in a real moment of, it's like stepping over a boundary, and then suddenly they feel really embodied and invested in this avatar figure as they're interacting with the other virtual figure in the virtual space, whether that
so there's still a lot of creativity, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and they really have that out of body experience, as I said in my slides. This attunement, remote attunement, and so suddenly those boundaries, or sort of fall away within this remote interactive experience. You become really in tune, I could say. But it's not to say that dancers do have to spend time within the system, as Fabio also said. There's a different kind of choreography that needs to develop. In a projection map space, there's different eye lines, because they have to keep the screen to find the other dancer as they dance themselves, if they're not actually in a VR headset. And then even if they are in a VR headset, then that can also be very disorientating, right? Because they're dancing and in motion, and they can like walk into objects and stuff like that. So there's a whole bunch of technical obstacles, as well as kind of cognitive, perceptual obstacles to overcome. But then when you get there, within that magic moment, there's a real sense of dance, communication, interaction, and communion within the virtual environment that we've achieved on several occasions, and we've seen other people achieve as well.
So Fabio, how about you? How have the dancers in your troupe reacted? Are they on board? Do they find it interesting? Are they thinking, oh, maybe this is the end of live arts because all of a sudden we're going to be replaced by, digital dancers? How do they react?
Yeah, actually, some of them they are quite scared about. Of course, they find it, not so comfortable for sure. But they are curious at the same time. I mean, I think these are two different approach for the dancers, as perfectly Daniel said. Is a matter of finding their physical aspect, the physical, the finding back their body. So they need to find this. If they can find it, everybody's okay. Everything is okay. Then there's the creator aspect, which has to be really considered, because some of choreographers really refuse the use technology as this kind of media and this kind of partners. Some of other, because we already worked on this kind of prototypes with 5 different choreographers. Each of them had a completely different reaction. Some immediately got the idea, okay, I'm going to put the camera here and I'm going to change the choreography in this way, and I want to get these results. Some others kept somehow much more distance. For example, bringing in some scenery, some props, some aspect they can manage, because the first feelings they had was they could not control the technology. We are working also with a video director, the voir director, who try also to find a way to communicate with the choreographer. So we are working a lot on building up a good deal and a good relationship between the voir director and the choreographers, which is essential to create a good trust, a good result at the end. But it's not simple at all. It's not really simple.
It's a whole new art form. It's something you have to learn. You both mentioned that this all kind of came about with COVID. We're in lockdown. It gives you time to kind of think about a lot of things, to be maybe creative. But isn't there kind of an overuse of technology that came out of COVID, where all of a sudden, since we have to do everything by distance, that we're not in the same room anymore, that we created all this new art form? Do you think we're maybe gone a little too far? I don't know who wants to answer that first.
I mean, I'll go first. Yes, of course, during the pandemic, we all became kind of screen locked to a certain extent. But in that kind of more passive way, and here we're talking about much more kind of, looking towards more participatory experiences and playful experiences, that incorporate dance and actual body motion, then we become active spectators. Now, next to that, there's a massive accessibility issue, like traditionally disabled people or people who would have difficulty going to a traditional arts venue can now experience it from their home. So yes, while there is kind of drawbacks of spending too much time fixed to a screen, and it's certainly with VR, it's hard to have an experience that lasts more than, for instance, 20 or 30 minutes before you have to take a break. Yeah. But on the other hand of that, there's, you're really expanding to different audiences who might be more comfortable experiencing these things at home. Certainly in virtual venues, people who might be very inhibited stepping into a kind of interaction space in real life, in a dance studio or in some kind of more interactive performance, they can come alive at that point in time. They can be a different person. They can explore a different side of themselves. And I think that's really, really interesting, even though, you wouldn't want to do it all the time, perhaps.
What's your view on that, Fabio?
Well, actually, we have made what we have done right now, this project on the VR, thanks to the pandemic, because otherwise we wouldn't have the time to develop it. But absolutely, we refuse the idea of this is gonna to be something that it will substitute the live experience. I mean, we are quite really aware about the fact that the people needs to have a live experience. What we are convinced in is that this kind of project can broaden somehow our kind of proposition. But for example, we decided during the pandemic, the hard time of pandemic, we decided not to make any streaming, not to project or not to send on the net some recorded or live projection of our shows or some other shows, because it's a different stuff. I mean, you can present a video of a show that maybe it's not a video done, it's just a documentation videos. It's just not something that has been produced to be presented as a video production, but something completely different. You can't ask the audience to attend a product like that. You need to do something different, which is a video production. So this work we did on the VR is something we believe that can, create some different proposition for the audience for the future, and so can have a new proposition. But it's not something that can at all may substitute the live experience. We need to go back, to run back to the live experience, and maybe beside the live experience, we can offer something that we create thanks to the technology.
So one last question: if you had like a crystal ball, how far do you think we can go with extended reality in the arts? You said that we need to go to the theater, we need to go see shows, we need to be together and to share this common experience. But it feels like maybe we won't be doing that in the future. How far can it go?
Yeah.
No, Google, please.
Okay. I think but prior to the pandemic, it felt like a very niche practice, right? A very small audience. And that's what's really changed in the last couple of years. It's become much more accessible, much more mainstream in many ways. So, and also there's a whole, like I might have mentioned earlier, there's a whole class of new performing artists coming up who are really excited about the possibilities. So I think we're really only just at the beginning of a much longer process that was catalyzed in many ways by the pandemic. It's going to be a huge growth industry. And you can also frame that through certain environmental questions, right? Because even the IETM, the Performing Arts Association of Europe, recently said, that this is a priority for performing arts. In a climate emergency,
it's more sustainable.
Touring is hugely damaging. Touring productions. So if there's any kind of, by honing and developing this form and increasing its reliability and efficiency, and having that sit adjacent to theatrical performance, I think this is a crucial question looking forward to the future. Obviously, as I say, we're still very much at the developmental kind of experimental stage, but we can have meaningful, experiences that may not substitute for the theatrical experience, but certainly are valid and high integrity experiences. And I think that's the future that we're looking at.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I have the exact sensation. We are at the beginning. We are still looking to which is the right path to take. But then for sure we are gonna to run towards something new, something different. The accessibility is a strong point of thanks to the technology we can get to. The new performers, the new creators will bring us more need regarding the use of technology and the creation or the production aspect. The audience will ask much and more of this kind of experience. Yeah, of course, sustainability is also matter. Touring without costs of traveling, it's a point. I mean, these are, I think it's going to be for an institutional situation the big effort, the big challenge, but it's something we can look to, and we have to think too, because it's something that any kind of fundings and grants start to ask for, to think about, so to use technology also to avoid this kind of cost. So yes, something is going to grow for sure.
So I guess we'll have to invite you in a couple of years to talk about it and to see where it's going. Thank you very much, Fabio, and thank you, Daniel. It was a really interesting conversation. And thank you to all of those of us following us. I hope to see you for our next ArtTech Conversation. You'll find all the information on our website. See you next time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.